The Tasman Sea is considered one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world due to the convergence of weather systems from the Southern Ocean colliding with tropical storms from the north. So delivering the Seawind 1170 from Sydney to the Auckland Boat Show proved to be an excellent stress test for this boat. In this episode, we get a detailed debrief from Multi-Hull Central's very own skipper and yacht broker Tom Adams on all aspects of the trip, including preparation, the offshore experience itself, and final thoughts after 8.5 days at sea. All right, Tom, we're going to have a bit of a debrief on our trip that was 2 weeks ago. I think we sailed into Opua.
Yep.
After a 8.5 day
eight
trip
and a half
across
days,
the Tasman on the Seawind 1170. About 1,248 miles, I think we had recorded.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just over about 80 miles over what the normal track was. So
The run line.
yeah, it was pretty good to stick to the course.
And pretty mixed bag of conditions along the way.
Mixed bag. I mean, started off with wind on the nose coming out of Sydney and some good short chop, which made for a bit of
some good short chop. Is there such thing as good short chop?
Well, no. I mean, you never really want wind
some nasty short
on
chop.
the nose like that, but it always comes with, short chop. Which made for an uncomfortable night, but the boat handled it really well.
Yeah, it was a heck of a night, that first night. And I think if anyone hasn't seen the daily video updates we're giving, it's well worth jumping in there. Short little video reels. But today is a little bit different. We wanted to sort of download on all the, the boat prep, the weather prep, the boat handling, and I guess our conclusion on the trip itself. So, I mean, you were the skipper in charge, and maybe quickly give us a little bit of background on your sailing history.
Sure. So I was brought up in the North Island of New Zealand, so coastal sailing, the odd coastal race, and then later on took my own yacht to Fiji, where my wife and I and two kids spent a couple of seasons, and have also done multiple passages and deliveries for clients and friends. So have got a fair bit of ocean miles under my belt, and my parents are avid sailors, so they've also taken their boat to the Pacific, and so brought up on the water. This was actually my first offshore on a catamaran. Most of it's been monohulls other than coastal sailing and what have you, so it was a great experience.
And Kiwi, so just born with salt water in your veins, huh?
Not all, but a lot of them. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I mean, there was actually a fair bit of prep that you did on the boat before we even thought about leaving. So maybe just explain a little bit of your approach to what you did on the boat. And we're talking about the Seawind 1170. It's only 2 years old, or 18 months old. So pretty new boat.
Yeah.
It's sailed to the Whitsundays and back, well, actually to Townsville and back with the former owners. So it's had a decent coastal shakedown.
Yeah.
Did some charter work with us here as well for a couple of seasons. But given all that, what else were you doing to the boat before we went offshore?
So we're quite fortunate that the previous owners had set the boat up pretty well. I mean, it had, an in-date life raft, servicing was all up to date on the boat. So obviously I was running through all of that, and all other safety gear. So checking your fire extinguishers, your EPIRB, your dam buoys, drogue, and all your first aid and safety equipment. So I spent, a good couple of days going through the boat, checking all of the systems and running everything, and ticking off all those boxes, just making sure the boat was well equipped for the trip, which, as we saw, you can get a mixed bag out there, and you have to be prepared for whatever the big ocean throws at you.
Yeah. So I think there was a rig check done on the boat.
Yeah. So rig check we had a full rig check done, which all went through no problem.
I think there's a gooseneck pin.
Gooseneck,
changed.
Other than that, everything was fine. Obviously, I took the boat out sailing prior to our departure, just to run through everything, make sure everything was furling and unfurling correctly, and just ticking everything off so fully comfortable to leave.
Running out all the sails, checking shackles.
Exactly.
You put jackstows on the boat.
Jackstows, yeah. So they're all on. And then checking, of course, all your pins and shackles and things that they've got, they're locked off on the ends, and that everything's tight and ready to go. Other than the only one we had was the topping lift, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And this is interesting thing with shackles. Obviously, that one was missed, but if they're not run with a little zip tie or some wire, they can work done, can't they?
And it's just constant movement out there. So, especially a topping lift, which is usually, you've got your main up for 8 days. And so that topping lift's not got any pressure on it, and it's, moving around. So it's a prime suspect for coming loose, which happened to us.
It's slightly unnerving to find a shackle on the deck.
Yeah, well, went up. Can't quite remember what I went up on the roof for, actually, but went up to do something with the sail bag, I think, and I saw the shackle in the drain there on the deck. So I thought, oh, that's come from somewhere. But luckily, another thing that was really good with Sweet Disposition was the previous owner had left a great toolkit on board as well, which had a selection of bolts and zip ties and spare shackles and things. So we were able to easily find a replacement for that and get it back on. So that was a minor.
Yeah. And, apart from redundancy in spares and engine spares and other things like that, we did take some spare fuel as well.
Yes, yeah. Took a 100 litres, so she holds 270 aside, and of course the boat's extremely economical. I mean, those two 30 horsepower Yanmars, are burning around 2 litres an hour per engine. In fact, from Opua to Auckland, we're in very calm water, but I think we're burning slightly less than that, at about 2200 revs. So very economical, holds a lot of diesel, but I always like to take, it's always been drummed into me, you always take reserve.
Sure.
And I actually had a real example of that when I sailed my own yacht in October down to Australia from Fiji. We got into a bit of rough stuff off Coffs Harbour, and my fuel line picked up a bit of air. And in order to, in the rough sea, fully bleed the whole system, I actually just ended up bleeding straight from the fuel can that I had, and then reconnecting, which was a much faster way to get the boat going again. So, yeah, I always like to carry spare fuel.
We did have a quiet patch in the middle where the wind dropped off, which we'll talk a little bit in terms of our weather routing overall shortly. But do you know what we actually used in fuel through the end of the trip? Because we put the spare.
Yeah, so we used we put 80 litres in from the spare 100, and we left the boat in Auckland with 190 litres aside. Right. So we used about 120 litres aside for the whole trip. And some of that was just charging batteries too, heating water.
That's true. Yeah.
It wasn't all actually motoring with power. So that we'll get to batteries, but I mean, that was a pretty quick way to charge the batteries up quickly.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too, isn't it? Because with those booster alternators on the motors in the lithium battery package, I mean, it was half an hour or so. And
it was amazing. I mean, the boat has a good array of solar, but as you saw out there, you don't have sunshine all day every day. In fact, most of the trip was cloudy.
Yeah, I was going to say half at least.
And so, the solar was putting in some, power, but with autopilot and, navigation gear and then nav lights all night and Starlink, etc., it's quite a draw. And so with those twin alternators on each engine, we're putting in 400 amps into the lithium batteries with the engines just above idle. They're fully charged from 60% in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it was incredible.
Fantastic. And a hot shower to go with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Heat exchange off the port motor.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we take a step back? And so we've talked about a little bit of boat prep here on the boat. And we mentioned jack stows. What about other safety equipment that are essentials for a trip like that you packed?
Sure. So, a drogue. For if you're in really, really bad weather. And we had a discussion on board when we were looking at the weather maps and how it had changed a wee bit coming up towards New Zealand, and about potentially having to go for that if things turned bad. Luckily that wasn't the case, but making sure you have that option on board. Dam Boy. The other one too is I always like to travel with a PLB in my life jacket, personal locator beacon. Ross and I had linked those to the GPS. So basically, if you just push the man overboard button, it shows up as an AIS target.
I noticed I didn't have one of those. So
yeah, well, I wasn't supplying them.
Right.
But yeah, following that, of course, obviously EPIRB and your Starlink, which is all your communications. Of course, if you lose the Starlink dish over the side or something happens to the boat, the Starlink usually goes with it. So I had the satellite phone as well, Iridium Go. That was sending our location on the tracking page, but it was also set up with an international phone number that I could call in the case of emergency, or send a text message. It's not always the easiest device to use, so I've managed to send text messages with ease with it, but phone calls can be a bit more difficult. But as long as you get the message out, it's a good backup.
So it's the backup from the Starlink, and you can still get some data through that if you needed to.
Yes, you can. So there's a data package on that.
Yeah.
It's sort of like dial-up speed, but you can connect to that.
And that Iridium Go is packaged with the Predict Winds package that you
you subscribe to it. So I've got a Predict Wind professional weather package online, and then you add your Iridium Go to that and pay for your subscription.
Okay. All right. So you've done your boat prep. You've got the safety gear on board. We mentioned jack stows. You had harnesses. Anything outside of the cockpit, you had the harness on.
Exactly.
Next to the jack stows. Yep. But before, obviously, we left, there was a lot of discussion around weather routing. Mm-hmm. And this is, I guess, where the magic of Predict Wind comes into its own. And I'm just going to share our screen here. Cool. Okay. So here we've got the Predict Wind, the actual replay of the data that we had, or the real weather as it turned out. And leading into this, though, we had, I guess, several weather potential.
Yeah. There are a few things out there. The one, which is the weather we ended up at the end, we sort of knew was coming. It did intensify a little bit as we got out there, as it came closer, which happens. The thing was timing, really. Of course, it's never always great to go on an offshore passage when you're pressured with time or crew time limits or things like that. But there were weather sort of restrictions as well, because there were other swirly systems forming later on that following week, from what we could see on the map. So it was, overall for a Trans-Tasman passage, we had a fairly good run as far as wind direction. The first bit was on the nose, and then it went light for a good period of time. But overall, I was pretty happy, really.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good weather forecast, and you can see as we were crossing the Tasman there, you're essentially chasing the wind, and you're left on a day that gave a decent forecast. We were analysing, I guess, towards the end of the week with great scrutiny, low pressure systems coming down from New Caledonia and giving New Zealand a little bit of curry. And then we also had this big low pressure coming across the Southern Ocean that ultimately gave us the southerly in the end.
So that low ended up forming more like a very short front that came up, and it was short lived. I mean, we had what wouldn't have even been 24 hours of that southerly, and it actually just slowly built up to where it peaked, and it was with the swell, and then by the time we actually got to the top of New Zealand, it had dissipated a lot. So I mean, right here, as you can see, we do get headed, and we go off course, and of course that's always a funny feeling when you're pointing in the wrong direction,
miles off the bum line going.
But really, we did a total of an extra 80 miles over the whole trip, which is amazing. And I suppose with a catamaran, you're always looking for speed and safe sailing angle, and you can always make that up later when the southerly comes in, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah, and we knew that big southerly front was going to push us back up, and hopefully we're going to have a ride from behind us. We didn't actually get much following sea
No,
until maybe the last 24 hours or so.
even then it was on our beam, so it gave the boat a really good test. I mean, having 4 meter swells on the beam, wind but more after the beam, but we didn't see anything crazy. I think about 32 knots might have peaked at.
Yeah.
But
we didn't have a storm scenario,
no.
but we had pressure.
The boat was very balanced though. Third reef main and a small bit of jib, and she was steaming along.
Yeah, and I guess that scenario of, we're looking at about a 7-8 day forecast and what might be transpiring at the other end. And as you mentioned earlier, there was a period where we're going, well, this looks like it could develop into something serious. You actually put the brakes on there for a little while, just to slow the boat down to allow the weather system to develop one way or the other.
Which we did. We did decide to slow down a wee bit. Maybe that did put us in a better position coming up to the Cape in the end. But I mean, I'm no weather expert, but from just some of the experience I've had, a 7 to 8 day forecast, it is difficult to get any certainty around the end of that passage. The first few days are pretty accurate, but you don't always have accuracy on the end. But it worked out well.
Yeah, and I guess you've got weather systems from 2 zones meeting in the middle, and New Zealand's not exactly known for friendly weather at the best of times. So
makes for good sailors.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Although we get some wind out here too, I must say.
Yeah, well, it's Tasman Sea at the end of the day, isn't it? So it can be gnarly either end. But I think it's just interesting that this data and this routing information that's now available is pretty useful.
It's amazing, yeah.
And you're right, we sort of had a loose deadline, and that we got the boat show this week.
Yeah.
We need to get the boat there, so we took the opportunity to go when we had a window. The window was pretty good.
Yep.
But maybe not perfect, but it made a educated choice, and it worked out quite well in the end. Now you mentioned, as you can see through this data that we're following now, getting lots of messages, that we had the sea on the beam or the nose for us majority of the trip. And actually you can see this low pressure system starting to form the top of New Zealand now. So this is real information, or the replay that we had. And we're just starting to get some proper weather here now. Now the sea states were 2.5 meter.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
So most of the trip, I mean, the first few days, we didn't see more than a 2 meter swell. And it was actually, I remember saying to you and Ross, gosh, there's no swell at all. It was really just what the wind was, propping up. And then it really, the first half of the trip, nothing until that southerly swell started to slowly, and it built slowly. Started off as quite a lazy swell, and then built up. And we knew that getting closer to New Zealand, the water shallows, those waves are going to stand up a little bit more, which they did. And beam swell of 4 meters where they're sort of curling over on the top. It's always an interesting one, but yeah, I was pretty impressed with how the boat handled those side waves. It was
well, and that's the point, right? It was side weather and pretty substantial at quite a lot of the weather we were in, and throwing the boat around a bit. But after a while, I sort of just got used to it and gained confidence, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the boat, as far as the autopilot and everything, handled beautifully. Never gave us any trouble. And the big one for me was the cockpit. I mean, the enclosed cockpit, especially in that swell, when you were having some come over the sides, with the clears in, you could stand at the wheel and be dry, even with a wave. And stand at the wheels and put the engines on and everything and feel totally enclosed and safe, even when the boat's getting thrown around, was really great.
I think that was the big takeaway for me.
Mm.
I've done plenty of sailing on these boats, plenty of coastal trips and so on. I haven't done the Tasman before, so it was a new one and a great experience. But certainly, Seawinds, I've got a good reputation for a good sailing boat, openness, comfort to a degree. But I think the safety factor in that saloon cockpit is totally underrated, and the helm positions on these boats is totally underrated. And that came into its own, I think, more so. We weren't doing much else in the cockpit other than reefing, was it? It was putting a reef in or shaking a reef out.
Yeah, and amazingly, the really clever design with the windows that electrically come down between the wheel and the inside, and just being able to turn that 12-inch B&G screen around to the saloon, and we're all just sitting there, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Brent's doing some work on the nav station, and you're just looking at the chart plotter with your AIS targets and your route and your wind and everything. It was incredible.
Yeah. And I think I made a little video around using the helm, but what we didn't have the opportunity to do was show a video putting a reef in that boat. And I think it's something I need to do because, we were out there in the middle of the night sometimes, or quite regularly actually. That's often when the reefs were being put in.
The wind always blows up in the night.
Come in and you'd be sitting there looking at the wind data and you go, oh, wow, it's getting up near 30 now.
Or I'd pop out from my sleep and go, I think we're a bit overpowered.
So it's time for a reef. So you'd come out and, particularly in the port side of the primary helm, just inside that little clear arrangement, you could ease out the main halyard.
Yeah.
Finger on the button to pull in the first winch. We had marks on the halyard length.
That was a really handy one, having woven marks for the reefing lines on the main halyard. That was really good.
So you set your luff length. You knew where the right position was that for the luff length. Take in on your reef line.
Exactly.
But it was all done inside the protection of the helm.
All done
and
inside.
you never get wet.
No.
Which is pretty impressive when you're out there in, in some occasions touching 30 knots or so with some pretty nasty sea state. So that was a real, great to see in action.
As far as offshore sailing goes, you always, with a boat, you want a bit of a compromise between that nice livable platform and something safe and secure for those trips you're doing, and that boat really delivered both.
Yeah. So we've talked about, I guess, the weather routing, the planning, the safety gear. The crew we had on board was obviously yourself and Ross that you've sailed with. Very experienced guy.
Very,
nice guy, easy to get along with.
Great guy.
I was easy enough to get along with most of the time. Crew considerations is something, isn't it?
Oh, it definitely is. Once you leave the harbour, you're stuck with those people for a week or more. So, picking your crew and picking them well is essential. Ross, I had sailed with many times before and offshore also. And he's kind of like family. So, that's an easy pick for me. And then of course, Brent's pretty easygoing. So that,
you got to say that.
All happened, all worked really well. I mean, as far as shifts were really well,
So 4-hour shifts?
Yeah. No, 3
hours?
6 on, 3 off.
Okay.
So, that makes it really easy, and you're getting plenty of rest. And even on your shifts, it's lovely because you can stay, you don't have to be out in the cold in the cockpit. You can stay in the saloon in comfort with your blanket and be looking at the GPS and all your stats and everything on there. So yeah, it was crew considerations important, but it was a good trip.
And the galley on this boat, we filmed a little video, you preparing some very nice food. You had excellent provisioning on board. You mentioned in that video that you had some pre-prepared cooked meals that you reheated. Didn't do too much fresh cooking, but did some. Yeah. It's very, very pleasant. But the galley itself works quite well, doesn't it?
It does. Galley down, a lot of people like galley up catamarans. But this worked really well, and I think a big part of it was the vision that you had there. So you could stand at the sinks or at the stove and see out to the water. And then also the height of the cabinetry on the other side is, low enough that you can hand something up to somebody sitting in the saloon. So you can see right through. And so it didn't feel like you were going down into a galley. It was quite a part of the boat and safe. You could lean against one side while you're cooking. It was very usable.
And the boat's, I don't know, pitching slightly less down there, I felt. But,
there is less movement.
Yeah, it's less movement than up higher. Certainly I noticed it. I think the whole boat revolves around the bathroom, which was quite useful.
Yeah.
So you're in the centre of effort. So centre of gravity on that boat.
Yeah.
Okay. Just coming back to boat handling in terms of the hull design of the 1170 that Seawind have adopted through most of their new design with raked bows and also the chine in the transom.
Yeah.
I certainly felt that punching into some of that sea state, those high bows really came into their own, as did the higher front beam. Yeah.
I think the likes of the 1260 would have handled that trip no problem as well. It's great, quick boat. But when we were going into some of that pretty heavy chop and even the swell, those rake bows really came into their own. That added buoyancy up front, made for a dry boat as well. Through all of that, we didn't have as much water over the bows as I was expecting to have.
Yeah, you'd occasionally get a big one over the top.
With a bang.
Fall out the back. Yeah, with a bang, and you sort of got thrown around a bit. I mean, it was quite violent at times, I must say, but the boat took it in. But it also, I found that particularly this boat, in that higher wind pressure, it really stood up on its back legs and accelerated in the 20, 25, even 30. Handled it.
This particular model, and I've sailed quite a lot of the Seawinds now, this summer, and that particular model, the 1170, really stuck out to me at the end of this passage as a real offshore model. It's not as quick in the lighter winds. It's not going to win around the harbour races in 10 knots, 15 knots, but out there in some rough weather with the bit of extra weight she's got, it really came into her own.
Yeah, I totally agree. You just ate it up. As far as sails go, we talked about reefing down. We reefed often in the third reef.
Yes.
Surprisingly.
And we spent about 2 days in third reef.
Yeah. And it's probably almost, I was talking to a sailmaker afterwards about even a slightly higher reef point on that boat because
the third reef is quite large. You could always adjust that so your third reef is smaller.
Probably for coastal sailing, it's in a good location.
Yeah,
but offshore, it would have been nice to have another metre or two taken out of the luff, I thought. And the jib, we were reefing or furling in.
Yeah, well, probably, some of that time we probably could have, let out that third reef. But the boat was powerful enough by just bringing that jib in and out. So, and that was super easy. It's just round the winch and in a bit and then out a bit. And so, just by adjusting that power with the jib gave us everything we needed without having to pull that other reef out.
One thing I probably, for myself taking on board, quoting up boats for customers, having a second electric winch, I think would have been handy for reefing purely.
Definitely.
If nothing else. Particularly, as you would say, let's tuck in the jib, and it's a fair bit of load when you're in 30 knots offshore, bouncing around.
I have no electric winches on my boat,
and
I'm used to not using them, but now that I've been sailing all these plush boats around, I'm pushing buttons.
Yeah, I think that would have been a nice luxury because
it's handy. It's
probably the only time you got a little bit wet.
Yeah, because you had to release the clear in order to get the winch handle around. Whereas if it was electric, you wouldn't have to do that.
It would have been completely comfortable. Screecher was up the entire trip, which was pretty impressive.
Furled
the entire trip and deployed. I don't know, for a day. I think we had it
at
out
the end
when the wind dropped, and on the last day.
Yeah. So I mean that was absolutely fine up there. We kept an eye on it, and it never slightly unfurled or looked like it was, struggling. So
I think part of that is the way it's set up, because you've got that longer on beam where you can really crank some tension on
Yeah.
with a 2-to-1 halyard, and it doesn't lose that tension so
Yeah.
much. I mean, maybe it flexes a little bit, but it was pretty impressive that it stayed furled without it didn't look like it was coming out
at all, no.
which was amazing. But it was very easy to pull out when we did need it.
Very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pretty much a one-person job, really.
Yeah. I mean, once we came around the Cape, that last, stretch down to Opal, we had a beautiful run with the screecher down there. And then that evening after Brent hopped off the boat, Ross and I had a lovely couple of hours out around Cape Brett, that first part of the top of the North Island there. And it was, beautiful run with it. But the actual passage itself wasn't screecher weather.
No, it wasn't. No, certainly not for the Tasman. But I can imagine maybe in the tropical areas you'd use it.
100%.
Yeah.
You'll probably use it more than the jib.
Right.
It'll be a very well used sail up there, especially because the ease you have of furling that in and out. It is so easy. So yeah, absolute 100% addition. If anybody is looking at ordering one, that is 100% got to be on there.
Yeah. So if we go through some of the conditions we had, so I guess from the slightest conditions, I think it was probably about day 3 or 4, we really dropped off.
Yeah.
We're doing a little bit of motor assist sailing there for a bit with the main up.
Yeah.
Maybe the jib, or sometimes the jib is furled. That was probably down to what, 8 or 9 knots.
Yeah, I mean, I think we even saw, variable 5 for a while.
Yeah. So a bit of motoring then. Screecher came out for a while. At the opposite end of that extreme, the strongest, low 30s, and then at the end, ocean swelled up to, I think it was about, what do you call it,
4.5 meters.
4.5 meters.
We were seeing, 5.5 on the forecast. But we were just on the back of that. So, we didn't get the worst of it as it came through. We sort of had more of that further out to sea, which is more in our favour, I believe, because the closer you get to land, the shallower the water gets, the land involvement with the weather starts to affect things, and the swell can rise and the wind can get more fierce. So sometimes out there it can be a little bit more consistent. Which is what we had.
And there was a discussion at one point when we're looking at that big low pressure potentially forming.
Well, that's why I wanted to go to Lord Howe.
Well, I've tried to get to Lord Howe for such a long time.
So, well, you're the boss.
Well, hey, here's an interesting thing. I actually wrote to them.
Did you?
And they wrote back and they said, no, sorry, you can't come in. So they wouldn't even have us, even if I could convince you to get to Lord Howe another day. But anyway,
you have to get prior approval for that before you leave.
You do. You're looking down the barrel of 5+ meter swell, and there was a discussion there of maybe using or prepping the drogue at some stage.
Yeah, and probably if that particular day we talked about what we would do and where it was, and I think that if the weather had continued to deteriorate further, then we would have set that up just as a precaution. But to be honest, the weather sort of leveled out or started to sort of improve a bit. We weren't seeing sustained winds above 30 knots. Yeah. So we had enough power in the boat to keep her moving nicely, but not overpowered. And she was handling the swell really well. So there was no need. And because it was reducing in strength, we were fine. But
I think some of the best sailing we did in the end was that last 48 hours coming into New Zealand as the swell did lift a little bit and the wind shock at least come around one of the rear quarter more so than the
and that's when we were seeing our 13, 14 knots boat speed, which is lovely.
Well, that's it. So boat speed wise, we were, I guess, motoring at 5-6 knots.
Yeah.
Top speeds and the low teens, particularly once we hit the flat water across the Northlands there was pretty impressive.
I think we were doing 11, 12 knots sort of consistently there for
without any sea state.
Down the New Zealand coast.
Pretty impressive crack of dawn. We had a decent level of food left. The water, we had gone through a good chunk of the water, I guess, by the end of the trip. Yeah. And you fired up the Watermaker on the last day.
Yeah, so the boat holds, this particular boat was optioned up with the reserve tank, which doesn't come stock standard, but it's an add-on. The main tank has 320 litres, and then there's another 200 litres with that reserve tank. So we had a total of 520 leaving. And of course, I always say, let's get that watered down before we start making more, gets a bit of weight out of the boat. But I think we got to about the sixth day, maybe the fifth day, before I turned the Watermaker on. Now the Watermaker is a powerful Watermaker. It's 140 litre an hour that it was putting in.
So this is a Rainman AC versus DC,
yes.
AC unit. With self-flushing, I think.
Yeah, auto flush. That was installed here.
Yeah, I think Ryan retrofitted that in Sydney.
So that was installed here at Multi-Hull in-house, and it just worked beautifully. So I think, I just timed it when we were charging the batteries with the engine. You don't have to have the engine running; that it will run off the system. But about an hour, batteries were 100%, and we'd topped the tanks up. So, there was no concerns about having hot showers and, washing dishes and keeping the boat tidy. And, it was very self-sufficient setup.
Yeah. And I guess coming back to power again, touching on it there, you had, lithium batteries could probably handle that, but you were pumping power back into the system.
Yeah.
And we were running the motors every afternoon, largely because we weren't getting the sun that we were getting on some of the days earlier in the
So the earlier days when we were having full sun, we were making enough power from the solar to cover everything and put charge in. So, if we wouldn't have had to run the engines half of what we did if we had everyday sunny day. But of course you can never count on that. So but amazingly, with the charging ability of that boat, you don't have to run them long, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of that package. And I certainly we're seeing on all the big boats going lithium, but that lithium with booster alternator package just gives you such fast, rapid charging that you don't get on the AGM batteries. Yeah. So it's a bit of a no-brainer, I think, for anyone doing liverboard cruising now, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's all really well synced. I mean, it was well done. It was all master volt right from the batteries to the chargers, the inverters, the solar controllers. So it was all a real good package that worked really well.
Yeah, yet it was still analog switching. There wasn't C-zone in the boat. It was quite simple.
Personally, I prefer. Well, I prefer a switch.
Yeah, I must admit, I agree to some respect. It makes it really easy to operate. Just the master volt controller was electric, giving you pretty good data.
Yeah. Just battery power, discharge, input, things like that. Yeah.
All right. So, Tom, you're a diehard Kiwi monohull sailor who's now crossed the Tasman on a catamaran. What's your final comments or thoughts on that experience?
Well, I was very impressed. I mean, we have friends with catamarans in the Pacific and things, and having two young kids, the livability on those cats is incredible, but being able to combine that with something that sails really well and feels safe at sea was just the ultimate package, really. So I might be sold.
I'm sure you are. I think, there's lots of different cats out there. But I think most impressively, I can put my hand on my heart and say that boat ate up those conditions offshore.
Yeah, she felt strong. She felt safe. There was no concerns whatsoever. For a new boat, there were no major issues. Performed really well, great turn of speed, comfortable. And I mean, this is only a 40-foot boat, just under. For a catamaran to perform like that, just under 40 foot.
Yeah, 39 footer.
Yeah, 39 footer with the weight she carried and what have you. She's highly impressive.
Excellent. Oh, well, if anyone wants to take a look at the boat, it's going to be at the Auckland Boat Show this week. Otherwise, we'll hunt boats in the Med.
Yeah. No, go and catch up with Brent at the boat show and have a look.
Excellent.
Through them.
All right, Tom, thanks for your debrief, and we'll catch up soon.
Till next time.
Cool. The Two Hulls, One Life podcast is brought to you by Multi-Hull Central, your multi-hull specialist for the South Pacific. you.